Hello, BookTube. I thought I'd give you one video for today. I doubt there'll be any others. I'm pretty sure that there'll be one video a day for the rest of this week and perhaps all this weekend. The reason is something I've alluded to in earlier videos. If you're just finding me with this video, I am in the middle of a spasm of gigantic home construction, and it's grown enormously from its original dimensions and seems like it's going to grow even more. This is the last glimpse that you will have of my little Frida, who is freshly trimmed and freshly washed, but who will not be in any other videos because I won't be filming here. I won't be filming in this location where she's nice and visible, which is a hardship for you, and anything that's a hardship for you is a hardship for me, and it's a hardship for her as well because it removes the little window that she likes to look out. It's just hardships all around. But since I don't know if I'm going to have the Wi-Fi or the bandwidth, mental, personal, spiritual, or otherwise, or the time to make a barrage of videos every day, I thought I would just make one portmanteau video covering the day's stuff. Covering all the day's stuff. Which isn't much today for a Monday. I mean, I will fold a tag into Tuesday's video. I'll fold comic books into Wednesday's video. I'll try to anyway. But that makes more sense to me than trying to make a whole slate of videos when the whole world is pulled apart, when there are wires hanging out of the ceiling, wires snaking up out of the empty floorboards where the floor used to be, interruptions everywhere at all times, and totally unpredictable. I'm hoping that that is one of the elements that I can limit, is the possibility of interruptions. I'm hoping that is true. We shall see. And also the possibility of background humming, background thumping, background noise of all kinds. I figure if we're all going to be dealing with that, we should deal with it only once a day. So I'm going to do one video every day until further notice, not a barrage. Let's see here. What can be the first thing? Okay, well, the first thing can be a June on the Range update. This is an inaugural BookTube event. It was created by Michael K. Vaughan. And it is all about Westerns. It's all about the Western genre that was once so incredibly popular and dominant in the book world, and then sort of faded away and has stayed faded away. Michael's read a lot of Westerns, and so have I. So have a lot of the posse of co-hosts that he's assembled. And I've been reading a huge amount of Westerns in the month of June. I've been trying to control myself. Sometimes when I get involved in a BookTube event as a co-host, I don't do a good job of controlling myself, and then I tend to make more videos than my co-hosts, sometimes by an exaggerated degree, like last year with Book Trek 2021. Now, Book Trek 2022 is coming up this summer, but I'm hoping that I'll be more controlled. But nevertheless, I have been reading a huge amount of Westerns in the month of June. And more so this last 2 weeks than ever before in my life. They, turns out, are excellent escapist fare. And boy, oh boy, have I needed escapist fare. So I've been doing that quite a bit. Reading a whole bunch, dipping my toe into authors that I've sold in bookstores, seen for years, seen in used bookstores, but never even considered reading. And in that, I have a lot in common with a lot of the rest of you who've been emailing me about June on the Range and saying that you've seen Westerns on your husband's bookcases or your father's or your grandfather's bookcases and never even thought of reading them, even though you know how much they're loved. And that now you're learning that there's something to this. There's something here. That isn't true completely for me. I loved Western novels before June on the Range, but there were quite a few big Western authors that I'd never read or never read with much attention. The neat thing about finding a neat new author in that way is that Western authors tend to be hugely prolific. So if you find an author you like, you can keep reading them for a long, long time. You can find all their books. But June on the Range has also done something else for me. It's caused me to think categorically, to think Jesuitically about what we actually mean when we talk about a Western. What is a Western? What are the essential characteristics of it? And what are the acceptable variations on it? And how many of those variations can you make before the thing you're talking about is not a Western anymore? I still haven't done a categorical video like that. And I don't know how much, again, mental, or spiritual bandwidth I'm going to have in this upcoming week to do it, which is the only time I have left, June on the Range, heads out of town on Friday. I will see, probably none of you are champing at the bit to see such a video, but in addition to, programmatic videos like that, where I examine what they are, I've also been examining those questions in my reading. With every new author that I come across, I've been wondering, okay, how are you doing any variation on the theme, or are you trying to? And that naturally leads me to some of my favorite authors who write a novel set in the American West, and those are romance authors. And that raises the question, can you write a Western that's set after the death of Queen Victoria? Can you write a Western in the modern day when the West is largely gone? There are quite a few Westerns that I have read set in the modern day that I think would easily qualify, but maybe not. Maybe they wouldn't. And are you writing a Western if you are including trappings of Westerns, of classic Westerns, but nothing else? Again, it would be easier for me to answer those questions if I had determined what those trappings are, and also what the nothing else is. What are the essential concerns of Westerns? Lots and lots of dime store Westerns will have some sort of aw shucks ma'am, you are just about the prettiest filly I've ever seen romance plots, but it's not the romance between two humans. The male character who makes pronouncements like that is always human, but the female character scarcely ever is. I don't think it's any coincidence that traditional Western authors are so comfortable referring to women as livestock. I don't think that's any coincidence. And I've seen that in a lot of the Westerns that I've been reading in the month of June. No, the deep, resonant, emotional relationship in most of the Westerns that I've been reading is reserved for men. Not necessarily in that way, but rather that one of the strands that I have seen Westerns to be preoccupied with is the forming of an elemental, deep, powerful friendship between two men. Maybe even between two men. In fact, I'd say usually between two men who aren't anything alike. In lots of older Westerns, that takes the form of a man from the right side of the law and a man from the wrong side of the law, who nevertheless sense something in each other that they like. That theme crops up a lot in a lot of the Westerns that I've been reading. It's the most famous example of the thing that I'm talking about isn't that. It's two men who are very much alike, on paper anyway, and that is Captain Call and Captain McCrae in Lonesome Dove. Larry McMurtry preserves that informal tradition as much as he can by making them very different in personality. But they're identical in almost every other way, and they're old and inseparable friends long before we meet them in that book. Whereas the thread that I'm talking about here is usually a deepening emotional connection between two men that happens in the course of the novel. But what about what else? Does there have to be a frontier for it to be a Western? Do at least some Native American nations still have to be independent, or at least fighting a doomed fight for their independence? Do there still have to be Indians roaming around in order for there to be cowboys? And do there have to be cowboys if you've got trains that move cattle by the thousands across the country, unmolested because there are no Native American tribes to attack the train or the tracks? Is it possible to have a Western under such conditions? I have met some ranchers in the American West who would say, yeah, it is. Our life is still here. So the stories that we have are still here. But I don't know. I don't know. Surely an organizing principle of the Western novel is the unsettled frontier. The idea of the frontier. Look at how many Westerns we've been talking about in the course of the month, where the main character is motivated by the fact that he's worried that the frontier is disappearing. It seems like it's an essential preoccupation. It comes to the fore with one of the two books that I want to talk about today for my June on the Range update. I've read two Westerns since last I talked to you. And one of them, I don't know. There's a ranch. There are horses. There's a cowboy, at least that's what he's called. But I don't think it was a Western. I kind of enjoyed it. It's by Stephanie Rowe, and it's called A Real Cowboy Always Trusts His Heart. Can't imagine what drew me to the cover. Perhaps the snow-capped majesty of the mountains. And this isn't a series of books that she wrote, a real cowboy does this, a real cowboy does that. And I think that those titles are meant to invoke the architecture and the machinery of classical westerns. But this is a contemporary story. Two people who, the cowboy in question gave his heart to the female main character in the book years ago. She wasn't interested. And then circumstances throw them back together. Her house burns down, and she has nowhere to go except to live just temporarily with him. And while they're in close quarters, sparks fly, and a romance is ignited. And the close quarters have undressed wall beams, and I imagine they have mounted heads. And there's, a ranch and a spread, and there are horses, and there are mountains, and the main character is considered by everyone in the book to be a cowboy. But I don't think this is a Western. I think this is a romance novel, plain and simple, using some trappings of a Western. Still enjoyable to read, but it sort of puts me on my back foot for other romance Westerns that I was planning on reading. Is it possible for a romance novel to be a Western, or vice versa? I don't really know. It's going to be fun to think about it. I'm going to give a few more a try. But the other book that I want to talk to you about, there isn't any doubt. It's a classic traditional Western. It's called Gather My Horses, and it's by John Nesbitt. Oh, God, I'm blocking the bean. I don't want to do that, do I? This is another author that I had not known. This is another absolutely horrible Photoshop cover. Just you can't really make out the details because of the dodgy lighting here, but that is just so bad. It's just. I feel certain that with a small tutorial, I could do a better job with those stock photos than this. But this turned out to be really, really good. It reminded me a lot of Elmer Kelton. It made me wonder if these two authors knew each other. It's the story of a young man who runs cattle for wealthy cattle owners. So they're not his cattle. And he doesn't play favorites, and he doesn't really have a dog in the race. But that activity that he's doing starts to impinge on the livelihoods of smaller cattle owners, smaller ranchers, who don't have the spread or the money or the means that the main character's employer has. And that's the springboard for the novel. About halfway through, that springboard, that premise, I sort of understood. And from that premise, you can sort of guess the outline of the novel, which is that the main character will slowly become aware of the fact that his true spiritual allegiances are with the independence of the smaller businesses that he is unwittingly helping to put out of business. In that sense, you comic book fans will know the plot because it is the Silver Surfer's origin story. It's that the Silver Surfer comes to Earth because he is the Herald of Galactus and then has his compassion ignited and has to turn against his former boss. That's basically the same story. But then the halfway point, right about the halfway point, the novel takes a turn. It is definitely grounded in the first half of the book. But I nevertheless didn't see it coming and sort of went, oh, come on. And it works. It absolutely works. It not only works, but it accelerates things. And it's all done with a kind of gentlemanly, calm storytelling. Maybe I would put it that way. It's a wise and totally confident storytelling voice here, of a type that I railed against it for the first dozen or so pages, and then I fell in love. Just fell in love with it. So John Nesbitt, like so many other Western novelists that I've been encountering, is someone I will find. I will find more of this author's work and read it gladly. What are the chances that this was a fluke? Flukes, I think, in Westerns are a lot less common than they are in other genres because Western authors, like I mentioned, they're very, very prolific. They don't wake up on a Monday morning and say, I think I'll write a Western for the rest of the year. It's going on the end of June. It'll take me about that long to write a Western novel, and then in 2023, I'll have the first draft ready. No, they wake up on a Monday and think, I think I want to write Western novels this week. One on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday. So if you fall in love with an author, chances are that a lot of their other books are going to appeal to you. Or at least if they don't appeal, they're going to be the same. The only differences that I've seen in prolific Western novels this month have been differences produced by the passage of time. where the author just loses a step or becomes codified in bad habits, even though they have the same narrative energy. Those are the only changes that I've really seen. Generally speaking, if I like, for instance, I read a Nesbitt novel now and I liked it. I think it's extremely likely that I will like the next one that I read. I may find one tonight and read it. I may need to. But anyway, that's my June on the Range update. And then we have mail that we can do. These daily videos don't have to be long. Believe me, I don't like this disruption any more than some of you do. But it's the best compromise I can think of, and it's the only. I wanted to give you a glimpse of Her Highness because this is the only time you're going to get this week. If she agrees to be in pictures, I can take pictures of her for Instagram, but this is the last time she'll be in the video until who knows how long. If you're worried about her, just email me. I will send you pictures. I will give you updates. But anyway, let's do the mail. And the first item that we can deal with here is the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, big broadsheet newspaper for the island of Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Massachusetts, which I love and loved for years and years and years, decades and decades. I know the vineyard very, very well. But I loved the Vineyard Gazette, but now I am writing for the Vineyard Gazette. There I am. See that? The Vineyard bookseller, or bookshelf, is me. This is The Italian Prisoner, a book we saw on the channel that I reviewed for the Vineyard Gazette, and I'm hoping that there are plenty more reviews in the works. It's tremendously gratifying for me. I admit it's kind of weird, but it is tremendously gratifying. Decades and decades ago, when I was a vineyard creature, I knew the editor of the Vineyard Gazette quite well, him and his dog, and he used to gently suggest, maybe you'd like to write a book review. I get books at my desk. They get delivered to the office. Maybe you'd like to review one of them. And I never did. I never even thought about it, really. I never took him up on it. And now, a long time later, a whole lifetime later, here I am appearing in the Vineyard Gazette. Then we have the New Republic. This has a cover. The article here is by Mark Hosenball, and it's called Will Merrick Garland Defend Democracy? And as is usually the case with big, newsy type periodicals like this, the big attention-getting question on the cover is actually dirt simple. It is actually a yes or no question to which the answer is obvious. The answer to this question is no. So do you need to read the 5,000-word commissioned article on the inside? That's up to you. The answer to the question is no. I'm sure that the article will do a lot of faffing around, so maybe it isn't solely concerned with answering a yes or no question. I'll have to hope for that. I haven't read it yet. And this has, naturally, I will turn to the section in the back, which is about books. And there's a review in the back of The Baby on Fire, which is a collection of letters between Alice Neal and Ursula Le Guin. And it's reviewed by Joanna Scutts, which is, might not mean anything to you, but it is cause for celebration among the old Open Letters Monthly crew. Cause for celebration. And then we have, lastly, the last periodical is the TLS. Probably the signature feature in this one is them polling 20 of their writers on summer reading, their summer reading plans. And then we have 2 book packages. Don't we, Bean? This hasn't been an easy 2 weeks for you, has it? It's pouring rain here today, so I'm not sure that this video will go up anyway. I don't have any idea if it will. I'll give it a try. It's been pouring rain all day. It's a warm, kind of tropical, humid rain, and that's the last of it. After this, it stops raining and gets hot. So it'll be warm on Tuesday, warm on Wednesday, much warmer on Thursday, and genuinely hot on Friday and Saturday as we go into the long 4th of July weekend. How that's going to work with dust flying everywhere and work happening and hammers hammering, how it's going to work, I do not know. We will go through this journey together. Hopefully, we will come out on the other end. But we have 2 packages here. We have a white envelope and a box. So we'll see what we have here. See if there's anything to brighten my asbestos-darkened day. Today's the only day where we'll have to worry about the rain interfering with the Wi-Fi. Oh, okay. All right, we've seen this already. This comes out in July. Yes, mid-July. This is the finished copy of Ned Bowman's book, Venomous Lumpsucker. Oh, don't want to block the bean. Okay. Yes, the bean is freshly clipped and freshly bathed. We had a bath yesterday, and it's always amazes me how easy it is. And I don't just mean in brute terms either. You know, it is easy in brute terms because she weighs 10 pounds. So I can bathe her in a plastic tub in the kitchen sink. No wrestling in the tub in the bathroom or anything like that. But it's also easy in the personal sense too, because she knows what's going on. She doesn't like it, but she understands it. And she is smart enough to remember that although she doesn't like the process, it only lasts about 10 minutes. And when it's over, she feels great. She feels really good when it's over. And that's enough to make her, she was an angel the whole time. But anyway, let's see what we have here for those of you who didn't catch this the first time. It's the near future, and tens of thousands of species are going extinct every year. But the loss is not total. DNA sequences are being digitized and uploaded to a global network of biobanks, and so are brain and body scans, recordings of behaviors in the wild, microbiota profiles, and constellations of other data. Soon, when the technology is more advanced, the lost species will be brought back. Then biobanks are hit by a coordinated cyber attack, erasing their cloud storage systems and laying waste to physical archives. Karen Resant and Mark Halliard are concerned with the survival of one species in particular, the venomous lumpsucker, a small, ugly bottom feeder that happens to be the most intelligent fish on the planet. Resant is an animal cognition scientist consumed with the existential grief over what humans have done to nature. Halliard is the jaded corporate environmental impact coordinator connected to the mining operation that wiped out the lumpsucker's last known habitat. Across the dystopian landscapes of the 2030s, the floating cities, toxic waste sanctuaries, and totalitarian hinterlands, these two hunt for a living lumpsucker. And the farther they travel, the more indications they find of something deeper, a hidden network of power and transformation at the far limits of their understanding. And I've had the advance copy of this. I've just held off on it all this time, but it comes out in mid-July, which is only a couple of weeks away. So this goes on the pile, but not the usual pile. None of the books that we'll be getting this week go on the usual pile, because the usual pile is under tarps. And this time tomorrow those tarps will be heavily spattered in paint. And who knows what else. So all of the books that I get this week are going to a different pile. And I'll just have to hope to keep them in one piece. I'll just have to hope that that is possible. So now we'll do the box. Doubtless it will be a finished copy of something that we've already seen. That tends to be the way. Let's see. Put all this junk away. Oh, no, it's not. It's not a finished copy of something that we've already seen. It's a finished copy of something else. Also comes out in mid-July. We don't want to block the bean. This is Rules, a short history of what we live by. Huh. Interesting. This is a history of rules in the Western world. Rules order almost every aspect of our lives. They set our work hours, dictate how we drive, and set the table, tell us whether to offer an extended hand or cheek in greeting, and organize the rights of life from birth through death. We may chafe under the rules we have and yearn for ones we don't, yet no culture could do without them. The author traces their development in the Western tradition and shows how rules have evolved from ancient to modern times, drawing on a rich trove of examples including legal treaties, cookbooks, military manuals, traffic regulations, and game handbooks. The author demonstrates that while the content of rules is dazzlingly diverse, the forms that they take are surprisingly few and long-lived. That's pretty interesting. What are the foremost rules in your life? That's very interesting. So who is the author, Lorraine Daston, when she's at home? She's a director emerita of the Max Planck Institute for the History of Science. Good Lord. Okay, that's a showstopper right there. A visiting professor in the Committee on Social Thought at the University of Chicago, and a permanent fellow at the Berlin Institute of Advanced Study. And her most recent book is Against Nature. Okay. That's pretty impressive. This comes out in the middle of July. It's a book about the rules. How fascinating. All right, so there you go. We have one nonfiction and one fiction. We have The Rules and Venomous Lumpsucker, which is gives the author a perfect example. The setup of the book, these two biologists looking for a living specimen of a fish. That gives the author the perfect gimmick, the perfect framework to tour the dystopian world of his book. Instead of just telling us about it in a laboratory, we get to look at it. We get to follow them as they go and find this fish. So that'll be interesting. So there you go. That is Monday's video. You've got a whole bunch of tedious life updates. Those are not in short supply. We have 2 books with a bunch of periodicals, and we have my progress with June on the Range. Love to hear more of your progress at June on the Range. I've been very, very happy with the responses that this event has been generating from a lot of you. That has been an unexpected thing. I was expecting that people would say, oh, Westerns, oh, sure, yeah. But it's been a personal discovery for a lot of you. It's been a personal discovery for me, too. Not quite at the same level. But it does open up areas. I've known a lot of older men in my life who only read Westerns. That was the only thing they read. Westerns in the paper. And I confess, aside from standout items like Shane or Laughing Boy or later on Lonesome Dove, aside from standout items like that somehow made it above the stratosphere of the genre ghetto, I never really gave much attention to that dedication of their reading. I liked Louis L'Amour, but I didn't really explore beyond that. And this has been an eye-opening event for me in that regard. Not only all of the categorical thinking, what is Western? What are we talking about here? But also that element as well. And I've been hearing from a lot of you that I think the same thing, that you're also experiencing that. So that's great. It was a little bit disturbing that I think some of my June on the Range co-hosts are a little Westerned out. I don't actually get fill in the blank out. I'm a big fan of repetition. A big fan of repetition. So I will be reading Westerns at breakneck speed right to the end of June on the Range. And then, biddable booktube creature that I am, I will simply stop and move on to July. But anyway, that is your daily update for today. There won't be any other videos. I have a whole bunch of other stuff that I want to talk to you about, but I can't guarantee that we won't be interrupted. I can't guarantee that it will work. So I'm just going to not do it. But there'll be a video tomorrow. I hope there'll be a video tomorrow, so I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.